Today we're going to be doing 7-5, factoring x squared plus bx plus c. The key thing to note here is that our a value equals 1. So another way we can write our trinomial is ax squared plus bx plus c. The key thing with this 7-5 lesson is that our a value is 1. So first we're going to look at how we multiply binomials. Remember, we use FOIL. So if we want to consider the binomial product, the quantity of x plus 2 times the quantity of x plus 3, and see how it relates to the trinomial x squared plus 5x plus 6. So if we FOIL, we have x times x, which is x squared, x times 3, which is 3x, 2 times x, which is 2x, and 2 times 3, which is 6. And then we add our inside. So we have x squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay. So the thing to notice is that if we look at our 2 and our 3 from our two binomials, they add to give 5. And they multiply to give us 6. And that will always hold true when a is 1, when we're looking at factoring. So we're going to baby step through this. So the first thing we're going to do is list all of our factors of the following values for c. So if we look at x squared plus 8x plus 7, our c value is our constant. So c equals 7. And we're looking what numbers multiply to be 7. Well, 1 and 7. But we're trying to get a positive number, so we could also multiply two negatives together. So negative 1 and negative 7 is also a set of factors. You always have to include the positives and the negatives. Okay. Looking at b, we want to find our factors of our c value, which here is negative 6. So we have a negative. So remember, we have to have a positive and a negative to get a negative. So we could have positive 1, negative 6, and then we could flip it. We could have negative 1 and positive 6. Our other numbers that multiply to be 6 are 2 and 3, so we could have 2 and negative 3, or negative 2 and positive 3. So with every set of numbers, you're always going to have two options and ways you could write it because of those signs. All right, looking at c, x squared minus 11x plus 28. So if c equals 28, okay, start at the bottom. So we have 1 and 28, which means we also have negative 1 and negative 28. Okay. Our next number that divides 28 is 2 and 14, which means we have negative 2 and negative 14. Okay, checking 3. 28 divided by 3 is a decimal, so that doesn't work. 28 divided by 4 is 7. If we have 4 and 7, we have negative 4 and negative 7. And 5 doesn't go into 28, and neither does 6. So there's all of our factors. Okay, so our next step is we're going to take this idea of finding our factors of c and then finding the sum that adds up to be that middle number. So here, identify a pair of factors that have the product of the first number and a sum of the second number. So our product is like our c, and eventually we're going to be looking at our sum, which is our b. Okay. All right, so our first one, we're looking for the numbers that multiply to be 42 and add to be 17. So if you need to write it out, so we have 42. Our numbers that multiply, well, we have 1 and 42. That doesn't work. And we don't need to look at our negatives here because we're adding to be a positive 17. So let's see here, 2 and 21. Well, 2 plus 21 is 23, so that doesn't work. So I'm just going to put a line through it. Same thing with that first one. All right, so let's check 3. Well, 3 goes in a 42 14 times. And what is 3 plus 14? 17. So those are our two factors, 3 and 14. And it doesn't matter which way you write them. If you write it 14 and then 3, that's okay. All right, looking at our second one, our numbers that multiply to be 81 and add to be 18. And this is actually a typo. This should be a positive 81, not a negative. Okay, so if you need to, write it out. Okay, so 81, the numbers we know automatically to multiply to be 81 are 9 and 9. And check those. 9 plus 9 is 18. So those are our factors. Your factors can be two of the same number. That's perfectly fine. All right, negative 45. Okay, we're looking for factors of negative 45 that add to be negative 12. So remember, a negative, we're going to have a positive and a negative factor. So we have, let's see here, 1 and negative 45. We add those, we get negative 44. So that doesn't work. Let's see here. 2 doesn't go in. About 3. So 3 and 15. And let's make our 15 negative. And those add to be negative 12. So 3 and negative 15 are our factors. Okay. All right, looking at our fourth one, we'll get multiply to be 15 and add to be negative 16. So 15, our factors of 15. Let's check 1 and 15. If we add those together, we get 16, which is close, but not quite the sum we're looking for. So let's switch it. Let's make it negative 1 and negative 15. If we add those together, we get negative 16. So those are our two factors. So negative 1 and negative 15. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. All right, let's see here. Fifth one, I'm going to move over here to the right. So we have negative 9. Our factors of negative 9 that add to be 8. So let's start off with our first one. We have 1 and negative 9. We add those together, we get negative 8, which is close but the wrong sign. So we're going to switch our factors, signs. So we have negative 1 and positive 9. If we add those together, we get 8. All right, our factors of 6 that add to be negative 5. I will tell you now, 6 and 5 are one of the hardest pairs to work with, so you have to be careful. So we're wanting to multiply to be a positive 6, which means our signs have to be the same. So if we check 1 times 6, add those together, we get 7, so that doesn't work. And if we did negative 1 and negative 6, that gives us negative 7, so that also doesn't work. Well, what else multiplies to be 6? Let's do negative 2 and negative 3, because we know we need to add to be a negative. And negative 2 plus negative 3 is the negative 5 we need. As long as you make sure your signs match to whatever you need the product to be, it'll make finding those factors a lot easier. All right, our factors of 1 that add to be 2. Well, the only thing that multiplies to be 1 is 1 and 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So our factors are 1 and 1. And lastly, our factors of negative 100 that add to be negative 21. Okay, so let's hear. We have 1 and negative 100. We add those together, we get negative 99. That doesn't quite work. A little too big. So work our way down. So we have 2 and negative 50. Those add to be negative 48. still too big. 3 doesn't go into 100, so let's check 4 and negative 25. If you add those together, you get negative 21, which is our pair. So our factors are 4 and negative 25. All right, second page. So we're going to take what we just did and apply that to help us factor. So if we want to factor each of the following trinomials, we want to find our b and our c. And remember, we want to multiply to be c and add to be b. So we want to find our factors of 28 that add to be negative 11. So go ahead and list out your factors. We have 1 and 28. Well, that's 29, so that doesn't work. So we have 2 and 14. Those add to be 16. So that's not quite right. 3 doesn't go into 28, so let's try 4 and 7, which adds to be 11, which is close. We needed a negative 11, so let's change our signs. So negative 4 plus negative 7 is negative 11. So those are our two factors. Sorry. So negative 4 and negative 7. So we found our factors. So the way we go ahead and factor this trinomial is we write two sets of parentheses. And remember, when we FOIL, we take our first two and multiply. Well, what two things multiplied by each other give us x squared? X and x. And then you're going to fill in the factors you just found. So negative 4 and negative 7. And that's how you factor when we have a leading coefficient of 1. A lot of times this is called your shortcut method. All right, let's do b. X squared minus 5x plus 6. So b is negative 5 and c is 6. We actually found these factors in the front. So our factors of 6 that add to be negative 5 are negative 2 and negative 3. And then write your factored form. Your variable always goes in front, and then fill in your factors. So we have negative 2 and negative 3. Okay. So this is your solution. And also, because of our commutative property of multiplication, we can switch the order. So if you were to write this x minus 3 times x minus 2, that would still be correct. It doesn't matter which order you put them. All right, looking at c, x squared plus 6x minus 16. So 6 is our b. C is negative 16. So you're looking for the numbers that multiply to be negative 16 and add to be 6. All right, so let's start at the beginning. So we have 1 and negative 16. And those add to be negative 15. That doesn't work. So let's try 2 and negative 8. 2 plus negative 8 is negative 6, which is close to what we need. So we know we need to just change our signs to be negative 2 and positive 8, which is 6. And then write your factored form. The quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x plus 8. All right, looking at D, you notice that our first term, or A, is not 1, so we know we have an issue. So remember what we talked about in 7.4, our greatest common factor. So we need to look, what can we divide 3x cubed minus 21x squared minus 24x by? Well, 3, 21, and 24 are all divisible by 3. And then our lowest exponent on our variable is 1. So 3x is our greatest common factor. So we're going to bring that down and then divide. So 3x cubed divided by 3x is x squared. Negative 21x squared divided by 3x is minus 7x. And negative 24x divided by 3x is a negative 8. Okay. So now we're looking just at this trinomial on the inside. Our a value is 1, so we want to find our factors of c, which are negative 8, that multiply to be negative 8, and add to be negative 7. Okay. So we have 1 and negative 8. If we add those together, we do get negative 7. So there's our factor pair. So we can bring down this trinomial and factor it to be x plus 1 times x minus 8. But to be completely factored, we also need to bring down that GCF we started with, that 3x. So 3x times the quantity of x plus 1 times the quantity of x minus 8. All right, last one, e. We have negative 2yx squared minus 6yx plus 80y. So start off by finding your greatest common factor. And remember, when your first term is negative, your greatest common factor is also negative. Okay. 2, 6, and 80 are all divisible by 2. And they also all have a y in common. So we want to start off by factoring out our greatest common factor of negative 2y. Okay. So if we divide, negative 2yx squared divided by negative 2y is x squared. Negative 6yx divided by negative 2y is a positive 3x. And 80y divided by negative 2y is negative 40. Okay. Now we want to look for our factors of c, which is negative 40, that add to be 3, which I'm going to help you out on this one. We're going to have 8 and negative 5, which add to be 3. I will say knowing your factors in your multiplication chart will be able to help you a lot in this lesson. Okay. All right, so go ahead and write your factored form. Our variable is x, so we have x plus 8 times x minus 5. And then bring down your GCF. Okay, if you have any questions, be sure to email me. I'm going to post this video on Canvas if you need to watch it again.